Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Jeffrey. We definitely a lot to cover. So, welcome everyone. Happy to be here. So, we're going to tackle this from a few different angles, really focusing on kind of the low code aspect of it and some of those big announcements, of course, since that's our kind of focus area here. But first, let's kind of like level set of what was the vibe of Ignite. So, I stole this from the keynote deck here. So, it was really all about kind of upgrading your operating systems. So, talking about how you run your applications in your business, how you build, and how you scale. So, really, all the announcements I think kind of fall into some of these buckets, right? So, how do you help with your systems and make them more intelligent with apps and agents? How do you equip everyone to build things for to bring business value and help with their daily workload with AI tools? And have dedicated transformation teams for that. And then more importantly, how do you scale that, right? With a managed platform and governance. So first I thought, so I attended Ignite virtually. I was sick. I wasn't able to make it in person this year, but Scott, you were there in person. Just any like quick thoughts before we go into some of these announcements of just like the vibe of Ignite in person, and what you thought from your end?
Yeah, thanks, April. Yeah, but the vibe. Yeah, vibe is very much the word of the moment, isn't it? Everything is vibe this, vibe that, which is cool. I like vibes. I'm all with the vibes, all about the vibes. But yeah, the vibe was pretty awesome, and it was huge. It really is picking up. It seems every year we get bigger and better and closer to what we were pre the blip. I was speaking. I did a breakout session and the amazing thing about Ignite is that you've got so many different groups of different types of people all coming together in one place. I think there was 20,000 including staff.
Wow.
So it's just such a huge number of people. The keynote was in the stadium downtown in San Francisco. So it really was a, stadium gig kind of setup. And the expo hall was absolutely huge. It was at one point I walked down. It was sort of in the basement of the expo center, and was walking around thinking, "Wow, this is pretty big." And then you kind of walk through an atrium area, and then you go into another area, and it was like double the size. So there was some amazing setups there. I was on the booth as well, talking to loads of different people, and I think that was what for me was so great is about the energy and the excitement from everyone that was attending, that they just wanted to learn about how AI can really be used in their business rather than learning about what it's possible now. It's actually people want to know, how can we make this work for us? And it reminds me when I first spoke at Ignite, I think it was 2013. It was all about like mobile apps and getting everything mobile and tablet enabled, and that was what everyone wanted to know. How do we make our apps work, mobile, disconnected, all that kind of stuff? Whereas now it's that same vibe, but we're just obviously looking at AI.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I could tell that too watching it online. It's really has shifted from, like look at all the stuff you can do and the art of the possible with it to like, okay, how do we actually get tactical now and really implement this and implement things securely and all that. I could definitely tell that was the vibe with a lot of the announcements too. And I think that's the first time heard it referred to as a blip. So that was, I like that. We'll go with that. A little Marvel analogy there.
Bit of
Uh,
MCU, yeah.
yep. Cool. Well, so why don't we just dive in then on some of these announcements? So I'll start with like one of the ones that kind of caught my eye. This actually was kind of quietly released at the Power Platform Conference, which is just a few weeks before Ignite, but I think it's worth mentioning again for those that might have not caught our recap session of that. And this is the whole concept of App Builder and Microsoft 365 Copilot. There were tons of announcements related to Microsoft 365 Copilot. This was one. I think it's kind of interesting because it's bringing the whole kind of vibe coding experience into Copilot to be able to allow you to build really personal productivity apps, I guess is kind of the intention here, built on SharePoint lists. So as you can see, you can put in a prompt there. You can reference files from, for the graph and all that, whatever you need, like this checklist app, and it's using Power Apps behind the scenes to be able to build this fully vibe coded app for you. I know there's a lot of questions around this, so like I think it's cool to have this capability inside a Microsoft 365 Copilot, just setting the intention that this is not going to replace, your enterprise things that you would build in Power Apps for, teams of people to work on and all that. This is really meant for those kind of more simplistic, kind of one-off scenarios, like an onboarding application or like helping you manage tasks and all that. But I think it was neat to see that they're thinking about how to expand the experience, just give us more ways to build these kind of interfaces that we can interact with on the fly, to just help us work more efficiently.
More way to vibe, more ways to vibe. It's all about the vibe, right?
Yep, I think you'll probably by the end of this, you're going to be sick of the word vibe, like if you're not already, because we're going to say it a lot. Speaking of vibing, it's not just all about vibing apps, it's workflow agent as well. So this is another one added to Microsoft 365 Copilot to give you a way to do kind of vibe automations, I guess. We'll go with that term, right? So this is kind of a more simplistic breakdown of some of the things that you can do in Power Automate as far as automating your processes. So it's really optimized for a trigger of like every day you want to do something. So like kind of a recurrence type capabilities. So maybe, or when an email in this case arrives, right? I want to do X. So there's going to be a subset of connectors that are available for you to automate things with the workflow agent. And you just give it a prompt to tell it what you want to do. Like when I receive an email, if it has the subject of bug in it, send the sender a thank you confirmation and send me a notification in Teams, right? Something really simple like that you need for your kind of personal productivity scenarios here. And it's able to actually build that automation for you. It identifies the trigger, the different connectors that you need to be able to connect to, automatically knows what to fill in and the subject and the body of the email and all that, and builds that out for you. So I think this is just yet another way included in your Microsoft 365 Copilot license that you're able to get some of those quick wins and automation wins with the workflow agent. All right, so those were two kind of big things, but there were a ton of Microsoft 365 Copilot announcements and improvements. So just general enhancements to things like the channel agent and the facilitator of knowledge. But there were a few key new agent capabilities that we have that I wanted to highlight. One that's not listed here is just a voice mode. So like being able to have that voice conversation with a Microsoft 365 Copilot was cool to see. And then I was excited to see under the radar kind of slip the Sora 2 support. So we can do video generation in Microsoft 365 Copilot as well. But one that I think is cool that I want to use in our team, Scott, is this Teams mode for Copilot. Because so imagine you're having a one-on-one conversation with Copilot and you're brainstorming your project. And what would you do traditionally? You would have to like, if you like the output and you wanted to get your team's feedback, you'd have to copy and paste that, kind of share it out in your team's chat. Well, now there's going to be a new button called Teams mode where you can start a conversation based off of your chat with Copilot and add people to that. So Copilot would be like a colleague in this case, and you can add that to a team chat to be able to have that back and forth conversation.
And
So
I think
that
that was
cool.
really very much the theme of the operating system upgrade is we're upgrading with
Yep.
AI working with us. And that's actually runs through the whole theme of the whole conference is how do we make that possible? How do we actually have AI agents working alongside us effectively and be able to govern all those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, we've been hearing that, right, since day one is, agents are going to be part of your extended team and we're going to hand off work to agents and all that. But I think this is making it more real with some of these new capabilities that we're starting to see trickle into Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is cool to see. Another one, so we have new agents like the workflow or workforce insight agents. So there's a series of HR kind of related agents that were pushed out. So that one's really helping you to get the skills capability that's in there and couple that with like real-time data of your team composition and be able to help how to improve employee morale and all of that. So that was cool to see. Now I want to dive deeper though into I think the one that probably excited me the most, or two of them, and that's agent mode in Office. So this was really cool. So I can't be the only one where you're using Microsoft 365 Copilot in the past. You're trying to ask it to say build a project plan or something, and it kind of catfishes you and says, hey, would you like me to export this, or make a Word document for you out of this or a PowerPoint? And you say, yes, sure, I would love that. And then it can't actually do that in the past. Well, now it can with the agent mode that we have. So these are in all of the Office products, so Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, and it's baked into Microsoft 365 Copilot now. So it can actually generate Excel, Word documents, and PowerPoints for you, and then baked into those products as well. So you can see this in Excel right now, being able to help you, analyze all of the data and get some quick information and all that. So having this baked into Copilot now, I think is really huge. I actually just came back from an AgentCon event in Milwaukee, and I did the keynote. And I noticed this was lit up in our Delver environment here. So I decided I'm going to try this on the fly just to see how it works. Haven't even tested it before. But I fed it some information from a deck that I had about a new product that we have. And I said, hey, can you create a PowerPoint slide deck to show to my boss and explain, what this new product is and the key information. And it did a great job. Like it even had advanced visuals in there. It wasn't just kind of like the basic, like boilerplate text kind of PowerPoint. It actually did a custom theme and visuals and everything, and it looked great, all with that agent capability. So it was really, really cool to see. And then the other one too, kind of along those same lines. So we have agent mode, but there was something called Project Opal. So this is using the whole Windows 365 Cloud PC thing. It's like combining that with the automation capabilities that we have in here. So this is available in the Frontier program. If you haven't enabled that, to be able to try some of this, but it uses an advanced reasoning model and that Cloud PC capability to be able to actually spin up a Cloud PC and then do all kinds of automations for you. So one example I think that they showed was maybe you need to do evidence collection for audits. And this was kind of cool because in the blog post where they were talking about this, they were saying that Microsoft uses this themselves and they save 20 hours per week by using this capabilities to do audits. So it could actually go and navigate the websites for you, capture screenshots, and do document validation and all of that, thanks to this basically computer use capability baked into Copilot now with Agent. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we can do with this, and we're going to see a lot more scenarios here. All right. And so all of that coming together, so this is not only built into Microsoft 365 Copilot, and we can just use that in our native chat, but when we want to build agents and custom agents with the Copilot Studio Lite functionality that we have in M365 Copilot, now we can also enable things like these Office agents as skills or capabilities in the custom agents that we build too. So it's not just limited to using inside of M365 Copilot. This applies to the custom agents that we build. So I've tested this out as well. We can enable the create documents, charts, and code capability, and it will use those Office agents natively in your agent as well. We have just some improvements behind the scenes to make sure that we have better responses from our knowledge sources, like our Teams meetings and calendar. And there's an enhanced Copilot connector experience. So we can now do granular control across all of these platforms that we use, and like Google Drive and GitHub and all of that. So just making that kind of Copilot Studio Lite experience even better and with more capabilities, which I was excited to see. All right, so I'm going to get into something that I know Scott is excited about, and I am too. And so segueing from M365 Copilot into Power Platform Land and Power Apps, this was a really big moment when Ryan Cunningham announced this at Ignite, and this was a brand new way to create apps and a brand new portal to create Power Apps at vibe.powerapps.com. So again, I told you you're going to be sick of that word vibe by the end of this, because this is a new vibe coding experience that we have. So it's, I think, basically, right, like a third type of Power Apps. So we have, Canvas apps, we have model-driven apps. Now we have these full code vibe-created apps with this experience. So it's going to do everything for you. We have like a code agent now, so it can do everything that we could do in Plan Designer as far as helping us gather requirements and do the solution architecture, but also that code generation to create a full code application backed by Dataverse with all that, and have these really customizable user experiences. So I know you've worked a lot with this kind of vibe coding experience, Scott. Anything to add here about where you see this going and what we can do with it?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the demo that they did. It really showed the possibilities. And the thing is that it's actually a vibe experience on top of code apps. So we've had code apps in Power Apps for a long time, and that is the third type of app. This is what it actually gets built behind the scenes. So we've been able to use VS Code, GitHub Copilot to vibe in a pure pro code, code first kind of way. But what this is doing is this is allowing us a pure vibe way inside Power Apps. So you don't get to kind of use all of the customizing of the code and things that you get in VS Code, but ultimately it gets deployed as the same type of app. So we've got these two ways in. And that's what's really cool. And the other thing that really stood out to me is that when you are building the app, it builds draft tables. Unlike at the moment where if you were going to go and build a plan and it creates a Canvas app or a model-driven app, you actually have to save those tables in order to test your app. Whereas what happens here is that you vibe the code, it creates all the TypeScript code, and you get to actually preview it against tables that are not committed to Dataverse yet. Those tables only get committed once you actually publish your app. So it gives you a lot more freedom to vibe and to iterate and change things without it actually getting committed.
That's cool. Like I know the whole code apps thing was exciting for people, but then there's some people that just aren't, they don't want to start in, in VS Code or whatever to do that. So being able to give this experience to, other makers and be able to have that same capability to build these vibe coded apps is really cool to see. And I'm excited to see what people build with it for sure. But that wasn't the only kind of bigger Power Apps announcement too that caught my eye. Another one was M365 Copilot in Power Apps. So we've had the ability for a while to have a Copilot-like experience in our model-driven and our Canvas apps, right? But it was limited. It wasn't like the true full-fledged Microsoft 365 Copilot experience. But now we have all of that capability. So they showed some really cool demos here of, we have our model-driven app open. Now with this new M365 Copilot experience, we can not only get that contextual awareness of, asking questions about our app, but things like code interpreter as you're seeing here. So it can call that code interpreter functionality, be able to generate, graphs on the fly, get detailed analytics. It can call those agents that we talked about as well if you have that enabled for, Word, PowerPoint, Excel generation. So really just making it even more powerful to have that kind of chat-based experience with the apps that you build in Power Apps and the full power of M365 Copilot embedded. Now that wasn't the only one though. I think there's another pretty big one here about the MCP server for Power Apps.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's very easy to think that, we're talking about vibe coding and building TypeScript. It's very easy to forget about, actually, there is also model-driven apps. And in the past, I've said that actually model-driven apps are entering a little bit of a renaissance in the sense that they're actually being invested in quite heavily so that they work alongside AI agents, because it turns out that actually having the metadata-rich environment model-driven apps makes it incredibly powerful to work with AI agents. And so Power Apps, the MCP server was announced, which is really cool, because what this enables agents to do is to work with Power Apps. So we just saw there, April, where you have full M365 Copilot in the sidebar working alongside your app so that sidebar can interact with your app. Whereas this is now allowing an agent to interact with your app autonomously. So you can come and add these MCP servers in. So you can see here, you've got log for human review and request assistance. And then we've also got invoke data entry and update tasks. So what all these actions, these tools are doing is allowing, if a agent gets to the point where it needs to enter some data, it can use the data entry system, which we've had inside Power Apps for a long time, where you can kind of drag a file in there or select a file from your M365 file history, and then it will populate the form based on the data you've given it, be a PDF or an image or whatever it is, an email even, and then it'll pick the right fields to populate. And so what we can do now is have an agent do that automatically. So I can kind of give a file in M365 Copilot and say, actually enter that into my app. And so what this does is that allows our agents to work autonomously and also then ask for help if it needs to. So you can see here on this diagram was shown here, we've got the automated repetitive tasks, which you would normally do if you were entering stuff directly into a form manually. Whereas now what your agent can do is use the Power Apps MCP server to do that for you. And then we can then invoke that from inside M365 Copilot. But there was also an enhancement to the agent feed. And we've had the agent feed for a long time inside model-driven apps, which is basically where you can add an agent into your app, and then you can see all of the things that your agent is doing along inside your app. But it was quite primitive. It sort of showed the different tasks that it was performing and gave you some basic ability to view records that that agent was interacting with. Whereas now with the MCP server, what we can do is we can have the agent ask for help and sort of create a to-do action inside our app. And that action can be presenting data to you. So you could have your agent say, okay, well, I need you to review this particular form that I've been given by email, and I'm unsure of exactly if this is the correct mapping to the different fields. And so then you can then see an action, a to-do inside the agent feed. You click on that, it gives you a bit of context about what it's asking you, and then it's going to present a user interface. So you kind of have these different user interfaces. At the moment, we've got the ability to show like a data entry diff view where it shows you the data that was there before and the data that it's proposing. It can navigate to a document and show you the data entry alongside that. But also what was announced was coming soon was the ability to actually have even custom user interface in here. So you can imagine a situation where an AI agent is performing a task autonomously on your behalf. It then decides it needs some intervention, it needs some help, and then it reaches out to you by creating a to-do inside your app, which then you get notified. You select that to-do, and then the agent has created a custom user interface that then allows you to interact with the data that it's got, the data that's already inside your model-driven app, and then decide on whether or not you approve it or not. So they showed some screenshots of like this human in the loop data entry where we had like a PDF, and on the right hand side we had the fields that it was proposing, and then you can then select the to-dos and it kind of give you a bullet point list of things to say like, I'm requesting some help reviewing this email that's come in with a PDF, and this is what I'm proposing to do. Or indeed, actually, it might even say, well, okay, this is the PDF that I had, and I've created this particular summary. Is that correct? So all of these different MCP tools are all about making model-driven apps being the kind of the user interface on top of our agentic experience and working alongside us. And so there was this early access program which you can sign up for, which they kind of gave a QR code. And so you can sort of join that, and you can be able to get access to all of these MCP servers. And I think alongside these MCP tools, we also then have CUA, so computer use in Copilot Studio, which is the flip side of this, because with the MCP servers, we're interacting with a tool that enables us to enter data directly into a model-driven app in a very structured, metadata-driven way, whereas there was a lot of focus of CUA in Copilot Studio, so enabling us to give a desktop to our agents. And that desktop then, the agent is controlling the mouse and actually clicking and looking at what's on the screen. And actually, I was on the booth at Ignite, and we had like this robot which was being controlled like a physical robot, not like a virtual robot, actual physical robot arm, which was being controlled by CUA from Copilot Studio. And you could win prizes and everything, but it was demonstrating the fact that you could have a user interface and you just describe in natural language. And this is the opportunity with generative AI in CUA, is that previously we've got robotic process automation where we have a very deterministic approach, whereas this gives us the opportunity for the AI model to then adapt based on what happens. So maybe dealing with unexpected things. So maybe there's like a maintenance window that pops up and it's just going to dismiss that, or maybe a validation message that we hadn't thought about for certain date ranges, and it will then deal with all of that. So we have these two sides now. We have this very deterministic tool interaction with the MCP server, but then we've also got CUA enabling that more of a simulating what we would be doing when we interact with systems. And so then, we were taking a little bit of a gear shift then. There was a lot of focus on sort of how we manage our agents and we manage our apps. And so there was this announcement of this enhanced inventory inside the Power Platform Admin Center. So you can kind of monitor all your apps and your agents alongside, and some really quite rich feedback on their usage. Now, previously you might have been using something like the COE toolkit to do this, but now this is all kind of built into the admin center. So there was a lot of focus on governance and admin. And Copilot Studio obviously got a lot of improvements as well, right, April?
Yeah, there was ton of it's almost overwhelming. Like I was just taking everything in you were saying about the Power Apps MCP and the KUA and like it's just like so much capabilities that we can do now. And there's new answer capabilities in Copilot Studio also that kind of caught my eye because anything to improve the experience and make sure that our agents are providing us the right information is really cool to me. So this is lots of improvements for Agentic RAG for SharePoint, which a lot of us use as common data sources for our agents. So it can now compare files in SharePoint for you. You can use variables to target, certain public websites or SharePoint sites better. There's metadata filters to better scope the knowledge that your agents use for SharePoint. And you can use ServiceNow via M365 Graph connectors. So just lots of things, as well as being able to decide to read the full file or just find in the file depending on a certain query, just to make that experience better when returning information, particularly from your SharePoint data sources. And you can kind of see this before and after with these new capabilities lit up, how much of a kind of better answer that you get, more specific to your question there with some of these capabilities. The other thing that really intrigued me too was a lot of improvements when it comes to MCP integration in Copilot Studio. I think this is big to be able to enhance the tooling and capabilities of our agents. So the MCP onboarding wizard got a nice, more simple interface, as well as OAuth 2.0 support, full dynamic OAuth 2.0 support. So just going to enable us to do even more there, and more support for selective tool integration. So this has been, a common pain point when using MCP servers, is you might not want to light every single thing up, that you can do there. So now you can go into your tool and select the specific tools of your server that you want to be able to enable and disable. So if you only want it to be able to, in this case, get emails and list those, but not actually send things, you can just disable those specific tools and then it won't be able to do that. So just another thing kind of going for the governance side of things, making sure that you can fine tune what you can do with the MCP integration there. And then also just beyond that, kind of bringing, custom MCP servers, they announced a lot more built-in MCP servers that we could take advantage of. I mentioned the Office agents earlier, so we're going to be able to have those Office agents capabilities as MCP servers inside of our Copilot Studio agents that we build, so we can have them generate documents and all of that. We also have like DocuSign, MCP, Salesforce, all of these, Monday.com and the Learn one. So all these just out of the box MCP servers that we can plug and play to extend the capability of the agents that we build. So I think that whole, kind of fine tuning of what exactly we can do as far as the tooling in MCP was interesting. And I think, another thing that was really, really huge is this concept of, how do we better manage these agents? And I think that's kind of what, this Agents 365 thing was all about, right, Scott?
Yeah, Agent 365 was the big thing that was unveiled in the keynote, and it's really good to see all these improvements, April, in Copilot Studio that you were just sort of showing there. And I think one of the interesting things is that what we've been seeing gradually is features that are being built into M365 Copilot, they're also being built into Copilot agents that you can build using Copilot Studio. And actually, it was a little bit of a footnote announcement, actually, but the ability to then upgrade a Copilot Studio Lite agent into a Copilot Studio full experience agent to get all of those additional like autonomous agents and all those advanced features. And I think, and also, like you said, being able to access things like the MCP servers for the Office. And that's very much the flavor of Agent 365, is being able to have this overview. We talk about it being this control plane for agents, because for a long time, organizations have been saying like, oh, well, we're building agents over here in Foundry, and we're building agents in Copilot Studio Full Experience and in Light, in M365 Copilot. They're all accessing data. They've all got users using them. How do we actually be, as Donna Sarkar says, the agent boss? We have to be the agent boss. And the only way to agent boss is to be able to have a single control plane, irrespective of where those agents are built. So not only are we seeing the homogenization in terms of access to MCP servers, but we're also seeing homogenization in terms of the visibility and the governance of those agents. And that's exactly what Agent 365 or A365. So there's these different pillars. We always have pillars, don't they? But one of them is access control. And so you can actually manage your agent access in the same way as you would manage in your individual access. So as we've got staff in our organizations and we say, okay, you have permissions to use this data source, you see what groups they're in, what tools that they are using. It's exactly the same thing. We're homogenizing how we manage agents in the same way as we've been managing individual humans in our IT systems for literally decades. So that really does play to this feeling of the fact that we are really trying to make agents it much more possible for agents to work alongside us using the same tools, obviously by access via MCP servers or by KUA computer use. And so obviously observability is really important as well. So as part of A365, there's all these additional views of who's using what in terms of which agents are using what, as alongside which humans are using what as well. So you can see there, sample metric is total active users and agents. And I think we're going to see that more and more. It's like users and agents. It's going to be homogenized together. I wonder if eventually we'll have a term for the collective term of users and agents. But that's what it's doing. So part of that A365 is access control and observability, but also visualization. And this was probably the most pretty thing that was shown, I think, in any of the different demonstrations, was this kind of really cool graph where you could see all your agents working, what apps they're using, and sort of to see the interaction, because governance of your agents is really important in the same way as we need to be governing individuals, humans inside Power Platform. So we need to have all these different policies. And so a single agent registry is really important as well, so that we can see all of our agents, what the tools they're using, whether or not they're built in M365 Copilot, full experience, light experience, or whatever. And so this interoperability is very interesting, because this actually builds on what you were saying earlier, April, about the fact that, we can bring in these agents into our teams. So I like to have a group chat where you can just say, hey, you mention an agent and say, well, could you do this for me? Or even bring into our meetings, right? And then the agent goes off and does some stuff and then reaches back out to us when it needs some help, or maybe it's come up with a proposal and then we can tell it to go off and do that proposal. I mean, you can see here, this was a demonstration where someone is in a spreadsheet here, and we're mentioning an agent and asking it to do something in our spreadsheet, and then it goes off and does it, and then puts and adds a comment in line inside the spreadsheet. So this really is crazy, because it is very much humans and agents being almost the same. We would mention a team member, at April, hey, what about this? And then you'd kind of do a follow-up comment. So that was really cool to see. And then, of course, security being a critical pillar, so that our agents don't just go off and get data that they shouldn't do. And one of the demos here was kind of the information rights labeling to make sure that it didn't take some sort of sensitive data and then combine that into a generative answer and then put that into an email and just email it off to each other. So in the same way as I can't just go copy and paste something from a classified document into somewhere where it's just not classified, agents then have those same restrictions. So those access control settings really then creates that guardrails for it to be safe to use AI. Because if we are going to use Gen AI and agents to really transform how we work, then we have to have those guardrails and make it safe. And so when we bring agents into our organization, we make sure that there's an approval process there. We can't just simply install an agent from somewhere and then suddenly it can just start working. And one of the interesting things about A365 is that it's obviously across all the different agent platforms. And so not just Copilot Studio and inside M365 Copilot, but also Foundry and agent frameworks with custom. And these could be agents. These could be agents that are hosted externally. And so we're and installing them into our organization and creating an agent ID. Because one of the thing that powers A365 is this concept of an agent identity. So we have a user identity. We've had that for, well, forever, right?
Yeah.
And but now we've got this, and we've had app identities. You know, having systems, web services, Azure being able to interact with other systems. But now we've got this agent identity that's part of Microsoft Entra. And Entra ID, there was an announcement, I think, what, a couple of years ago, I think. Maybe was it? Maybe last year. I forgot now. But the agent ID that was announced for, you know, a long time now, but now really starting to see it come into play with A365. So you can then see that all those agents in that registry and see what they can and what they can't do. And so Microsoft Purview, always watching, is critical to that. And so your posture always makes me laugh when people talk about, you know, your security posture, because it makes me sit up straight. I think, you know, but I think, you know, when someone says, oh, you've got bad posture, because they're noticing certain things about, you know, the way you're sitting, you know, your angle of your elbow is not quite right, or you're looking down and that your face is not facing the screen. And it's the same thing with security posture. It's like all these different aspects. So managing sensitive data and compliance and looking at how you manage your threats and how you detect those threats and how you investigate those threats. So Microsoft Purview and Microsoft Defender form a key part of the A365 story. So A365 is not just like an entirely net new thing. What it is it is about homogenizing the way in which we interact with all these different things and making sure that they work really, really well with our agents. And so there's like security dashboards, which gives an overview of all these different areas. So, you know, you've got all the recommendations from Entra and all the recommendations from inside Purview and inside Defender. And so, you know, you get like a posture assessment. And, you know, you can see all the headline numbers, and then you can drill down and see the recommendations it's making. So yeah, there's a whole load of dashboards that are being built to make it look pretty, but it is very much about tying all these different products, all these different ways of managing your security posture together so that it works alongside us and our agents.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. There's like you're saying, it's not necessarily like one new product, right? It's like a bunch of capabilities that have been there, kind of packaged and to help our agents. Because I mean, if we want agents to work alongside us as a team and truly be, you know, collaborative like that, they need to have the same level of kind of security and visibility and insights as humans do, and its own unique identity, which is key to a lot of, you know, what's in Agents 365, and really, really cool to see. Now, there's this whole thing too about work IQ. I think that turned some heads. Like, what exactly is this thing? Is this something new, or is it kind of another repackaging of like stuff that was already there?
Yeah, the IQ stack I've been referring to. I don't know who first said that or where I heard it, but I heard it somewhere, and it kind of made sense to me, this IQ stack, because we've got Work IQ, Foundry IQ, and Fabric IQ. And yeah, it's all about being able to manage your the data and having memory and having inference over all of those different aspects. And there's this slide build here for Work IQ, which I think was probably the most prettiest slide
That is
build
pretty
from the
cool.
whole
Yeah.
conference. If only we could make our PowerPoints have all of these cool effects where it's glowing and yeah, they've got lots of designers been working on this, I think. But Work IQ is partly something that we've seen already, which is like the announcement we've had a few months back about memory coming inside M365 Copilot. And so it's part of that. but partly also access to the graph, Microsoft Graph. So, being able to see all these different aspects of the way which we interact with all the different applications we use. So Outlook and Excel and things like that. And I think this is the key thing, is that when we're using M365 Copilot, the agents inside M365 Copilot need to know the memory about us, but also know what access we have, what applications we've been using, interact with that, and then reason over that. And I think part of the Agent 365 story is also about managing all of those MCP servers as well, because that's the way which we interact with all these different tools. And so through MCP servers, A365 allows us to manage access. And then Work IQ then is this sort of place where M365 Copilot can go to get all of that context about the way that we work. And so then there's other IQs. So it's all about the IQs. It's the three IQs.
Vibes and IQs. That's the right?
Is that a collective? Yes, definitely. The collective noun of IQs is a vibe of IQs. Can we make that a thing? But then Foundry IQ is about having a very similar sort of concept about giving a context that works really, really well with our agents, that allows us to access the knowledge inside Azure AI Search, like unstructured kind of data. And then there was also Fabric IQ as well, which is it is again a similar kind of concept, as it gives us the ability for our Fabric agents to see the structure of our data and how it all fits together, and then reason over it. And it's something called ontology inside Fabric, which just stores all of this. I guess you could probably refer to it as metadata in a sense, but the way you previously would have interacted with Fabric would be that you kind of, maybe there was some natural language capabilities, but ultimately what it's doing is it's creating DAX queries or SQL queries. Whereas now these data agents, these Fabric agents, are then using pure generative AI with access to all of the MCP servers and all the different data sources that Fabric has access to then really allow it to reason over all of those different data sources in one lake. And Fabric IQ is the part of that. And I'm certainly going to be delving more into Fabric IQ and sort of, seeing exactly what it looks like in reality, and ontology as well, because to me, it's just metadata, but I'm not a Fabric expert, so. But Microsoft AI Foundry was renamed to Microsoft Foundry. So we've dropped the AI, which kind of makes me, it's like, it's just ubiquitous now.
It's not a Microsoft event without either a logo change or a name change.
Yeah, well, we had all those logo changes. So we had to kind of do a few proper name changes as well. But the internet, used to be a kind of a thing. Organizations used to have internet divisions inside the companies. It's like, okay, here's a team that manages the internet strategy. And for a while there, we did have teams that this is our AI strategy, and because we had Microsoft AI Foundry. Well, actually, now it's becoming ubiquitous. It's almost like it's obviously got AI in it, so it's like we don't need to call out that actually it is. But it's this suite of all these different parts of Foundry that all come together, and one of the words that was being used is describing it as an agent factory. So you've got Foundry IQ, which is talked about, but then all the tools, machine learning, and all the models, and then the management of that, and the governance and the compliance. And of course, just recently, actually, it's just been announced that we can actually connect to Foundry agents inside Copilot Studio as well. So now we're getting all of these cool things. So we're getting the Anthropic models inside Copilot Studio. And the key thing here is that the announcement was that they're in Azure now. So they're not outside of the Microsoft ecosystem. Those Anthropic models are inside Azure, and so we can sort of use them safely from that perspective.
All right.
So there was a QR code as well. so we can all kind of sign up and get access to that cool PowerPoint and tool that you were describing.
Yeah, just if you want to get the cool PowerPoint alone, or you can get access. It's in the Frontier environments, as we said, so you can try it out and see what it can do. I know we have a couple more minutes. We can look at the Q&A and see if we have any questions. I do see one in there. Um, I don't know if maybe Scott, you want to tackle this since you mentioned the COE earlier. So asking, would you still recommend building out a COE environment given that the admin center has all these new capabilities?
Well, I think that the large part of the COA toolkit was about catalog, right? So it
Yep.
was very much about being able to see all of your apps, your flows, all your different parts of all of your environments in one place, and that was the COE environment, as it kind of brought. Now, there was some challenges with scale, so for very, very large organizations, that did cause some challenges in ingesting all of that and putting it in one place. So the catalog, which is inside PPAC, Power Apps Admin Center, which gives you all your apps and agents alongside, and you can report them. That's a really good upgrade to that. So if you're just using the COE toolkit for that catalog and being able to see things, then yeah, I think PPAC and these new announcements will really help there. But of course, the COE toolkit has got an awful lot more than that, and so it may be that you've got additional processes inside your organization in terms of how you manage your environments and automating certain different types of creation. And still, so I think there is plenty of opportunities to have a COE environment and having all the automation and the nurturing, the emailing out of people, the managing of various different things. But we're certainly seeing more and more of these features that were in the COE toolkit in that environment moved into sort of more mainstream managed environments, and it often doesn't get lots and lots of fanfares, but there are continuous improvements to managed environments inside the Power Apps Admin Center. So always look at those announcements. Keep on looking at what are the options, what is available just natively when you turn on that managed environment switch.
Yep, absolutely. All right, last question. Of everything at Ignite, what was your favorite announcement, the thing that excited you the most?
Goodness me. What was
Putting
the
you on the
thing that
spot.
excited the most? Well, you know what? I think for me, it was not specifically an announcement, right? It wasn't like a piece of technology, because I think Ignite is one of those conferences that is all about the art of the possible and about like expanding your horizons and, well, I mean, it's igniting your creativity, like they say in there. But I think that notion of agents being able to work autonomously, we've had that for a while. But when agents can work autonomously and they can be proactive and such that you can invite them into your teams, you can hire them into your organization, and then you can give them things to do, tasks to work on, manage what apps they have access to, and manage the desktops that they have access to, um, and then see how we make sure we govern that, make sure they're not getting access to data that they shouldn't be, and it's not being put in different places that we don't want it to be. All of the things that we've been doing in terms of governing us inside organizations and creating guardrails, because we make mistakes, agents make mistakes as well. So it's no surprise that we should manage them in the same way. And I think that was the thing that really excited me, is that the reality coming to fruition of agents being proactive, like truly autonomous. And that was one of the things about A365 is there's an Agent 365 SDK that enables not only the reporting of what your agents are doing, but also managing that kind of proactive nature where they'll reach out to people and suggest things and then get feedback.
Yep, I have to agree. I mean, I think it's really turning some of these concepts into reality now with all the A365 stuff, and being able to have its own identity. And I got my work cut out for me. I think I know what I'm going to do on holiday break is dig into some of this stuff and learn more for sure and get up to speed. So awesome. Well, I don't see anything else in the Q&A, but I know that this has been fun. Hopefully you all have had fun kind of talking with us here about some of these announcements, but I know that we have some more of these events coming up, right?
Well, yeah. Thanks, Scott and April. No, I learned a ton. Before we kind of move on to these, I'll open up the floor. If anybody's got any questions, for Scott and April around the announcements made at Ignite, please feel free, to kind of join the conversation. Otherwise, I kind of have some questions. I learned a lot out of this, and if nobody's got any questions, if you guys have a little time, I kind of want to ask something and learn a little bit more.
Yeah, go for it.
So for me, a lot of the conversations that I have are quite often around agentic governance and security and stuff. So I'm really excited about the IQ stack. What's what would be the elevator pitch for the IQ stack? Like how would Work IQ and Foundry IQ and Fabric IQ like work together?
I think that it's more a concept of what do we need to do to make the information that we maybe have typically accessed through very sort of machine to machine kind of interfaces. So like Microsoft Graph, or through kind of DAX and SQL, or through a way of interacting with OneLake. How do we make all of those kind of things be able to be truly contextual? Because if you think about it, the way that we had APIs, we had custom connectors for a very long time. Great, we've got an open API, Swagger doc kind of definition. It's like JSON, inputs, outputs, all of that kind of stuff. Why do we need MCP servers? Well, it's the C in MCP. It's the context. It's the rich, natural language, compatible way of describing what that API does. And so, I mean, this is very much, my understanding is very much in progress because this is all very new stuff, right? And I mean, it's even new to Microsoft, even though we've been working on it for so long. It's not relatively, it's new. But the concept of having context about all the different things that we interact with, the metadata that works really truly well with LLMs, with M365 Copilot. To me, that's what the IQ stack is about. It's like it's the MCP server to the Open API. It's the IQ stack to Microsoft Graph and other APIs.
That's great. Are there any gotchas where you would not use the data agents just yet?
The inside Fabric, the Fabric data agents.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Gotchas. Well, that's a good. I mean, the only gotcha that kind of springs to mind is when you can include a Fabric agent inside Copilot Studio now, which is really cool. So you can say add external agent, and in the same way as you can now add in an agent SDK, agent framework, or an A2A, even like the Google A2A protocol is now available for us in Copilot Studio. You can add a Fabric agent, data agent, but there are some timeout gotchas, I think, potentially. If you're accessing data that is going to take a long time to query, you could potentially hit timeouts. That's the only one. But I dare say that that's going to be dealt with. One of the things that agents are very, very good at is iterating, right? And it's having that context, that where it tells you, kind of gives you updates. Like we've all used M365 Copilot Researcher. You go off and tell it to go and research something, and it tells you, okay, I'm doing this, and now I'm looking at that, and I'm going, that's interesting. I didn't expect that to be like that. I'll go and try this, and so it's that kind of constant feedback. So I expect that any timeout kind of issues probably will be rolled up into that more of that iterative feedback. But that's the only one that springs to mind. April, what about you?
I mean, yeah, I haven't really dove into it that much, but like timeout's the only thing that I can really think of too, that like any gotchas until I dive into it more myself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's actually something I've run into already playing around with it. So yeah, fair assessment. Well, good deal. Well, any other questions from anybody in the audience? Okay.
It's good to see some familiar names in the audience as well. So
Yes.
hello to everyone joining. Thanks for joining. And anyone that's watching on the playback as well.